Okay, good morning everyone in Chazak. Baruch, thank you for joining us on this beautiful Monday morning. Shavua Tov and Chodesh Tov. Welcome everyone to a new month, to a new week, and to a new Perashah. As we are studying this year the Perashah through the lens of the Ora Haim HaKadosh. The Ora Haim, Rav Haim ben Attar, was a great rabbi from Morocco, born at the end of the 1600s. And I have no doubt that we are receiving much zechut this year. So much merit, Be'ezat Hashem, to everyone listening, because of the dedication that we are giving, because of the constant commitment through to studying the Ora Haim. The rabbis tell us that the tzaddikim, when their words are studied, when their works are delved into, they are a militz yosher, and they come and they pray and they provide and they beseech on behalf of those that study their words. We should be zocheh to have all the blessings. Everyone here listening, whether it's the live, whether it's the recording afterwards, we should have the zechut of the Ora Haim HaKadosh standing by us, for us. But of course, the biggest zechut, my friends, is when we apply what he teaches us, when we apply what the Torah is telling us. Our Perashah, my friends, Perashat Hukat. Perashat Hukat, Chok means, what does Chok mean? Chok means a mitzvah that we don't know the reason for it, right? There are Hukim and there are Mishpatim. There is a Perashah called Perashat Mishpatim, by the way. That's the Perashah of all of the laws that we understand, right? Help people and don't kill and don't steal, right? That's Perashat Mishpatim. Our Perashah is Perashat Hukat. It's the opposite of a Mishpat. Chok, it's mitzvot that we don't understand. So think of an example. Which mitzvah would you say is a mitzvah that's not so necessarily obvious, maybe not so rational, right? Which mitzvah would you say, right? So we know different ones, sha'atnez, and not to use a blade when we're shaving, right? These are different hukim. Okay, of course, correct. Our Perashah, of course, comes along and tells us about another chok. So let us read first the Pesukim, just a couple of Pesukim. V'daber Adonai el Moshe ve'el Aharon lemor. Hashem speaks to Moshe and Aharon, saying, Zot Chukat HaTorah. The following is the ritual of the Torah. Asher tzivah Hashem lemor, that God has commanded. Daber el bnei Israel, speak to the Jewish people. Ve'ikhu elecha para aduma. Oh, here we go. We are introduced this week to the red heifer. Okay, the red cow. God says to Moshe and Aaron, command the Jewish people. The following is the chok of the Torah. They have to bring to you a red cow. Para aduma. Temima. Without any blemish. Asher en ba'mum. No defect. Asher lo ala aleha ol. That it never carried any yoke. Okay? We're talking about a pampered, spoiled red cow. Never lifted a finger in his life. Always getting manicures, right? Never carried a yoke, right? Para aduma. Untatem ota el Elazar HaKohen. And then bring this to Elazar. Ve'hotzi ota lemechutz hamachane. He'll carry this red cow to outside of the camp. He's going to slaughter it, shachat ota. Then he takes from its blood. He's going to sprinkle some of the blood. Then he burns the cow. And then with the ashes, you ready? Here's what's going to be done. He takes, along with some cedar wood, hyssop, crimson stuff, he throws them into a fire with the cow, and then he's going to take all of this mixture and sprinkle it on someone that's tameh met. Okay? If somebody is tameh, if somebody touched a dead body, if someone was in the same room as a dead body, they are tameh. Okay? Every one of us listening right now, we're probably tameh. Okay? Very rare to find someone in the world that's not tameh, because everyone went into a cemetery, stepped into a room in a hospital with dead people, right? So likely all of us are tameh. That's why today we don't Kohanim, as an example. One of the reasons Kohanim today, they don't eat terumah. Really, when you give Kohen terumah, he could eat it. You take a piece of challah, right? If you have a baked dough, you ever make challah. So when you make bread, so you take a piece and you say a bracha, lahafrish challah, you take off a piece, and really that should go to the Kohen. But today we don't give it to the Kohen because the Kohen himself doesn't want to touch it. He doesn't know if he's tahor. He's afraid to touch it. Maybe he's impure. Maybe he went into a vicinity of a dead body. And when a person becomes tameh, they're limited in what they're allowed to eat. Like over here, the Kohen. A person's not allowed to eat korban when they're tameh. That's why we find the Jewish people, when they did korban Pesach, remember we saw the story back in Pesach Sheni, right? The second Passover. What gave birth to that story, to the second Passover? Because there were people that were tameh on the first Passover. They touched the dead body, and they came to Moshe complaining. He said, "It's not fair. We couldn't eat and partake in the first Pesach because we touched a dead body. We wanna make up. We want a second chance." And Moshe had to ask God, and God says, "They're right. Give them a second chance. Let them make it up. Make a Pesach Sheni. Okay, make up date." And that is an example of where we find this law of Tumah and Mit, of a person who's impure because they touched a dead body. It was in effect. It was in effect in the desert. Okay, very interesting. Very interesting. And this is our parasha, beginning of our parasha, the laws of the red heifer. Red heifer. And it's called a chok for many reasons. Obviously, why in the world now, if I'm impure, how does the ashes of a red cow make me now pure? Could you explain that one to me? Does it make any sense to you? If you told me to dip in a mikveh, I understand. A mikveh, it's like a shower, it's clean, makes a lot of sense. If you told me to sprinkle water on the guy, it makes sense, sprinkling water. But no. The way you get clean is you got to sprinkle blood and ashes of a red heifer. First of all, I'm getting dirtier physically. And why red heifer? What's wrong with a regular cow? What if it's blonde? Anything wrong with a brunette cow? It has to be a red, gingy cow. Okay, what do you got against other colors? No, it has to be red. Okay, none of it makes sense. It's all purely chok. Not rational. I mean, again, doesn't mean that there's no reason. Hashem knows the reason, and He told few individuals throughout history that Moshe knew the reason. But we, in general, we don't know the reason. It doesn't make any sense. It's not a rational mitzvah. And therefore, this is a chok, my friends. This is a chok. Rightfully so. Another reason that it's called a chok, by the way, if we could just go a little bit deeper, is that the wild thing of this whole ceremony is that, you ready? The Kohen, the Kohen that sprinkles the ashes on you, on the tameh person, so you become now clean. And here's the kicker, you ready? And then the Kohen who did the sprinkling becomes not clean. So go figure that one out. Good luck to that. You know what I mean? Now I'm completely confused. So that's why this is a chok, and it's not just a chok, it's the quintessential chok. There is no greater chok in the whole Torah than this one. And that's what the parasha says, Zot Chukat, this is the chok. Okay, this is just the introduction to the Orah Hayim for today. Comes along the great rabbi and he says, Lama kina lemitzvah zo shem klalut haTorah. The Orah Hayim asks a very simple question. I understand that you're calling it a chok, but why are you calling it a chok of the Torah? That's not correct. It's not a general title, a chok of the whole Torah. This is a chok. You should have said, Zot Chukat. This is the law of purity or impurity. That's what it should have said. The following are the laws of impurity. No, it prefaces it and says, the following are the laws of the Torah. It's not the laws of the Torah. It's the laws of one tiny mitzvah in the Torah of, again, purity and impurity. I'll give you an example. Remember when we got the laws of Pesach? What does the pasuk say over there? Zot Hukat HaPesach. The following are the laws of the Passover sacrifice. And again, they're laws, they're chukim. They're not necessarily rational, but they're titled, right? If you had to title a book on the laws of the red heifer, what would you title that book? I would title it Laws of Purity, Laws of Impurity, right? No, the laws of the whole Torah. Why? Question is why? Okay, how does the title, the pasuk, opening pasuk of our parasha, Zot Chukat Torah. This is the question of the Ora Hayim. I hope you appreciate the question. I hope you understand the question. I hope I'm being clear in expressing the question. Ve'en lomar, don't come and answer now. I know what you're going to answer, he says. You're going to say, because when you're impure, you're not allowed to study Torah. So now that I'm pure, I could study. And that's why we title it the Laws of Torah. Because here's what you have to do in order to be able to study. That's what you're going to answer? Says the Ora Hayim. It's not a good answer, because it's not true. You don't have to be pure to study Torah. If you're touching a dead body, you're impure, you're allowed to learn. You're allowed to open up a book, you're allowed to read Gemara, you're allowed to study Torah, you could get an aliyah, you could go to the Torah, you could read for everyone, you could be a chazan. You're not forbidden to study if you're impure, right? Only we find that Ezra instituted that if someone saw seed, then there's a ba'aleh keri, then it's he made a rabbinical decree not to study Torah. But even that is not binding today. And even that's not what the pasuk's talking about. Pasuk's talking about a regular guy who's tameh met, who touched a dead body. And therefore, such a person is allowed to study. There's no restriction on Torah for him. So again, back to the question. Why are we titling this chapter? Why are we titling these laws the laws of the Torah? Good question. Amazing question. Ve'it ba'er ha'inyan explains the Ora Hayim. Gorgeous. Al pi ma she'amru beperek batra de Nazir. Based on what we learned in Gemara and Masechet Nazir, upsako harambam, and Rambam also records this in his halacha book, in the laws of Tumah. Very interesting halacha. Look at this halacha. En hakuti na'aseh tameh met. A non-Jew doesn't become tameh met. If a regular non-Jew, your neighbor, Paul, your neighbor comes and, Francesco, he comes and he touches a dead body. What happens to him? Nothing. He doesn't become tameh. And this is what the Rambam writes. Im naga bemet onesao oheli alav. He touched a body, he carried a body, he went in the same room as the dead body. Harehu kemo shelo naga. It's as if he didn't do anything. And it's no different than if an animal touched a dead body, what would happen to that animal? Let's say Sally the cow is walking and touches a dead body. What happens to Sally the cow? Nothing. The idea of becoming tameh to a dead body only applies to Jews. Doesn't apply to animals, doesn't apply to non-Jews. Applies only to Jewish people, a man or a woman. If we touch a dead body, we become tameh. And the question is why? Why are we different? Ve'hineh ha'avdel, and he explains, my friends, as follows. Now this separation of the Jews from the rest of the world, shebo hurbu am bnei Israel mishar hagoyim, which elevated the Jewish people. Let me pause and ask you, what is the difference between us and the non-Jews? What do we have over them? What do we have different? We all have eyes and nose and ears, heads, shoulders, knees and toes, right? What do we have that's different? What do we have that's different, my friends? We have one thing. We have a heart. They have a heart. What do we have? Ha'hevdel, the difference is that made us elevated over the rest of the world, is the Kabbalat HaTorah. Is that we receive the Torah on Har Sinai. Shezulat zeh, because if not for the Torah, my friends, look at this line over here. Hineh kekol hagoyim bet Yisrael. Without the Torah, there's no difference between us and the non-Jews. We're the same. We both vacation in Capri. We both go on yachts in the summer. We both have houses and bills. We're both doctors and lawyers. Okay? Maybe the Jews have bigger noses. Okay, fine. But, everything else is pretty much the same. What do we have that's different than the Goyim? There's only one thing, the Torah. If not for the Torah, there is no difference. We don't have different DNA, we don't have different blood. We're just like the Goyim. Ume'ata, and if that's the case, ta'amnu tzuf devash, we have a beautiful honeycomb-like sweetness to understand now the words of the Torah. Zot chukat ha-Torah. Now we understand the title of this week's parasha. The laws of Para Aduma, they are titled the laws of the Torah. You know why? Because all of these laws, the laws of why we become impure and why we have to get all of this sprinkling done, is because we got the Torah. All these laws, Zot, Hukat, are a result of the Torah. Because we receive the Torah. Perush Chukat zo shel Tumah utna'ei taharata. All of these laws, the decrees of a dead corpse and the requirements to purify from it, Tesovev meha Torah, is because we receive the Torah. Without that, the Jewish people would have remained like the other nations, unaffected by the corpse of Tumah. Wow. So says the Orah Haim, now we understand the first three words. Zot Chukat Torah, the laws of the Torah. And now you may ask, but why? Why should that be? Why should it be that receiving the Torah now makes me more susceptible to Tumah? Explains the Orah Haim in the great words of the Kabbalists. Look what he says. Ki al yedeh shekiblu Torah, by receiving the Torah, na'asu am bnei Yisrael davar sharuhanim hashiflim te'evim medabek behem. By receiving the Torah, the Jewish people became something that the low spiritual being, what we call the forces of evil. There are forces of evil out there, okay? There are negative energies out there. That's the ruhot, right? The outside, the klipot. They cling to attach to holiness. Liyotam hativa shel kedusha elyona. Because the Jewish people are now a entity of the sublime holiness. Because we received the Torah, now the Tum'ah tries to latch onto us. All the purities, the forces, the negative forces, they cling to holiness. In general, the concept is like this. Pure evil cannot exist on its own. Pure evil needs a powerhouse. It needs an energy. It needs outlets, right? It needs something holy to sustain it. And therefore, forces of impurity seek out sources of holiness with which to connect in order to draw their own sustenance from it. Anything tameh, anything impure, anything negative, anything dangerous, anything evil needs a lifeline, it needs a source of energy. And energy only comes from holiness. So you always find that the forces of impurity latch onto the forces of purity. That is the rule. And that's why we find, he says over here, this is true, by the way, bechayehem ubemotam, both in their life and even in their death. It means as follows: bechayehem, when we're alive, benogeya bemet o yahilu alav kadome, like we said, a living Jewish person touches a dead body or goes in the same room as a dead body. So now the tum'ah in the corpse will cling to that person. They won't separate imlo bekoach gadol, unless forced to do so with things like the para aduma, like we said, the ashes of the red heifer. Ubemotam, and also in the death, gam ken titrabe tumah, also in the death, the tum'ah is it latches on. What that means is a Jewish dead person can create a tum'ah in the room that he's in. But a non-Jewish dead person cannot create that tum'ah in the room. If there's a dead guy and a non-Jew in a room, if you go in the same room, nothing happens. The point that he's trying to bring out, though, at the end, is the same thing. That tum'ah needs kedusha. And that's why he gives a beautiful example, by the way. He says, if you have a container, let's say you have two containers. One container is filled with honey, and the other container is filled with waste. Upina otam, and you empty the container and remove them from the room. What happens now to these containers? He says, Ota shaita melea tevash mitkaptim la kol hazvuvim v'harmasim. When you have a container that was filled with honey and you empty it out, all of the insects, all of the bees, all of the flies, they come to that container. But if you have another container of garbage, it does attract certain flies, but nowhere near as much as the container of honey. So the Or HaHayim uses this as a beautiful analogy. The same way the container of honey attracts more flies than the container of waste, so too when a person is holy, when a person is Jewish because they accepted the Torah, so that person now attracts more flies, more tum'ah, more negative energy than a person who is just a regular container or a container of garbage. That cannot attract as much. The Jew, because of the Torah, there's much more negative. That's the balance of life. In general, we do find a lot of times you may know people that are that are maybe family or friends, that they're very perverted, they're pulled to do impure things. But you should know that those people actually have the greatest potential for holiness. It's often people that are so pulled by the negative. The reason that is because there's such a potential for the positive. Because there's so much holiness. You should know about yourself. If you find that you are that type of person, then the amount that you could accomplish is actually so much greater than a regular person. The potential for holiness, for Kedusha, it's only because there's such a void of holiness, and the holiness that you have is so large that you now emptied it, and it was filled instead with impurity. That there's so much unfortunate bad behavior. But that bad behavior is only an indication, my friends, of the amazing potential that person has. If there's someone in your life that you feel is doing inappropriate things, or maybe things that people shouldn't be doing, or whatever it is, that's actually, you should realize that person could be so great. That's not a reason to look down at the person. Of course, unfortunately, they're not maximizing. They're not doing what they should be. They're not stepping up. But if they are able to be brought in the right direction, if they're able to be inspired, the moment that happens, actually so much, you do find that a lot of times these people that are so messed up or whatever it is, they're so spiritual, right? They're so holy. They're so, right? They're abstract. That's the Or HaHayim. The Or HaHayim is saying, the Jewish people, because we have so much, and that's why you find, by the way, you find in any time there's a person on the world stage that does the worst things, you end up finding somehow that they're Jewish. You realize, oh my God, that guy's a Jew, right? People in history that had the worst ideologies, that they corrupted, the most messed up hashkafot, most messed up philosophies, that they preached to the world things that were, you find that they're all Jewish. That is because the more holiness, the more potential also for Tumah. And that is why, my friends, it's Jews that are tameh in an oil. It's Jews that if they touch a dead body, they become tameh. Zot Chukat HaTorah. These are the laws, all these laws of impurity. You know why? It's because we have the Torah. And therefore, we have to realize, my friends, how careful we have to be. Because the potential for failure, the potential for falling, the holier we are, especially as Jews, we could really fall very low. And it's important that we make sure that we always we remember that. And that we live up to the holiness that we were given, to the Kedusha that we were given. I'll give you another example, by the way. If a lady gives birth, we know what happens. She becomes tameh. It's a spiritual impurity, it's not a physical thing. But a lady gives birth, she becomes tameh, she's forbidden to be with her husband. And the Torah tells us that the amount of days that she becomes tameh for, anyone know how many days? How many days a lady who gives birth does she become tameh? So, if you answered, it depends, you were right. Okay, it depends if she had a boy or if she had a girl. If she had a boy, she becomes tameh for 7 days. 7 days, and then on the 8th day is the boy's brit milah, and the parents are pure. And the reason that's given by some opinions is a very beautiful reason. At the brit milah, everyone's happy. Everyone's celebrating. But if the wife was still impure, she wouldn't be allowed to be with her husband. They wouldn't be able to hold hands at the bris, taking pictures or whatever. And it would be a sad day for them. And it's not fair, God says, that everyone should be happy and they should be sad. So Hashem said the Tumah for a boy is 7 days. Because then on the day of the bris, on the 8th day, they could be together. Beautiful. But a girl is not 7 days. What's a girl? 14 days. Now it's very interesting. Really, according to what we just said, a girl should be 8 or 9 or 10. What's 14? A girl is 14. Why? Our rabbi said, I saw something beautiful one time. 14 days is double what a boy is. A boy is 7 and a girl is 14. And the reason is when a lady gives birth to a girl, so what is Tumah? Tumah, like we just said, is created when there's a vacuum. When a lady's holding a child in her, that child is life. That child is holy. When the holiness leaves, so enters impurity. But when a lady's holding not a baby boy but a baby girl, so she has double holiness, because that baby girl one day could herself become a mother and be pregnant. And so when that baby girl leaves, she has double potential of life, so double the potential of impurity. So not only 7 days of impurity, but 14 days of impurity. Because that girl herself that's inside of her could also be holding a baby one day. And so it's all doubled. So you see the Ora Haim's concept here. We see it all over. We see it all over. And anytime we're feeling, again, a certain thought or certain feelings that are negative, we should always know that could actually be channeled in the positive to the same strength the other way around completely. The other way around. If we're having a down day, a sad day, if we're able to flip a switch in our minds, we're able to take that same level of sadness, let's say from a 1 to 10, I'm a 9 sad rabbi, you actually could go into a 9 happiness right now. Right now, in the same moment. If you're able to channel it, that feeling, right? When a person's feeling something, when there's that energy, if it's channeled the right way, you're taking the same energy, you're just moving it the other direction. And therefore, Ora Haim now, by the way, he's not done. Look at this. Wow, look at this. He says, now I have another answer to another question that bothered me. Look what he says over here. He says, why is it that Hashem, when we came to the Pesach in Egypt, when we were in Egypt, there were certain rules of who could partake of that Passover sacrifice. God was careful about 2 things. First of all, you couldn't be uncircumcised. Every male had to get a Brit Milah. And like the Pasuk says, Va'evor alayich. We say this Pasuk in the bris. Va'evor alayich, va'erech mitboseset bedamayich. God says, I passed through in the night of Pesach. I passed over, like the holiday, Passover. I passed over and I saw 2 bloods. Which 2 bloods were there? I know the blood of the sacrifice. What other blood? Damayich, your bloods. What blood? The blood of the Brit Milah. So every Jew had to be circumcised in order to eat Korban Pesach. And number 2, Ben Nechar, right? It had to be that they were not attached to Avodah Zarah. The pasuk says, "Mishechu ukhu lachem tzon." Step back and grab a sheep. Step back from Avodah Zarah. The Jewish people had to get rid of all of the idolatrous thoughts. They were not allowed to partake of the Korban. So the only thing God cared about when it came to the Korban Pesach was circumcision and Avodah Zarah. Ask the Ora Hayim the obvious question: what else should God have said before Korban Pesach in the Exodus, in the year that we were in Mitzrayim, in the year 2448? What else? What was missing? He should have said also, before you eat Korban Pesach, make sure that you are tahor. Like any other halakha of Korban. A regular law of Korban Pesach, you have to be tahor. You have to go to the mikveh, you have to get the ashes, right? Like the, what's it called, by the way? In a year later, those people that they couldn't eat from Korban because they were tameh. So how come in Egypt, God didn't say, make sure that you're not tameh? What a great question. What a simple question. And you know what he says over here? Because the Jews weren't tameh met in Egypt. Because like we said, you only become tameh met when you're very holy, when you receive the Torah. Only Jews through the Torah become tameh. In Mitzrayim, we still didn't get the Torah. So no Jew was yet tameh. We were all like non-Jews at the time. We weren't tameh. So it wasn't a problem if we touched dead bodies. We didn't become tameh met. Wow. Gorgeous. Because Adain lo kiblu Torah. And therefore it was only the other two laws of circumcision and avodah zarah. You know what it's like, by the way? Teach you a halakha right now. Okay? Probably never halakha that you'll ever see in your life, because it's so rare. You have to have a few things happen in order for this to happen. But look at this. Let's say, Bezat Hashem, we get Korban Pesach very soon. B'mira b'yameinu, amen. We have Korban Pesach. Let's say, on the Erev of Pesach, right? Pesach is the 15th at night. So the 14th during the day, as we are sitting around the table, as we're in the lined up for the Beit HaMikdash to kill all the animals, and we know that you have to be tahor. That's one of the laws of Korban Pesach. You have to be tahor. So you ready for this crazy law? You ready? Here's a crazy halakha. Let's say you have a Jew there, touch a dead body. Touch a dead body. So what's the halakha? He's out. He's out. If you touch a dead body the morning of the 14th, too late, because he needs 7 days to become clean. He don't have 7 days. We're eating it tonight. So he's out. He's got to do Pesach Sheni. Okay, see you later. You know, Chag Sameach. Right next to him, you had a non-Jew, also touch a dead body. What happened to that non-Jew? Like we said, nothing. Non-Jews don't become tameh by touching dead bodies. All of a sudden, that non-Jew converts to Judaism. What happens now? He's a Jew. All of a sudden, he comes and says, okay, I want to eat Korban Pesach. But 5 minutes ago, he touched a dead body. What's the halakha? He's allowed. Because the dead body didn't affect him beforehand, because he wasn't a Jew yet. Now again, halachically, anyways, is not allowed what I just told you. Only from the rabbis, they made a decree not to do that, because next year, maybe this Jew, this convert, will remember the year before he dipped and he was fine. We don't want it to confuse with other years. But technically speaking, says the Orah Hayim as a proof to what he's saying. Technically speaking, a non-Jew that converts the morning of Passover could eat the Korban Pesach. And same with the Jewish people in Egypt. They were like non-Jews, and then and therefore the Tumah didn't affect them. Unbelievable. So this is the Chukat of the Torah. And this is, my friends, why it calls it the laws of the Torah. What makes us so impure is because we got the Torah. And there's always that balance of tension, that seesaw that exists. And because we have so much potential for greatness is also the reason we have so much potential for falling and how careful we have to be. That's the first answer. The second answer is a much shorter answer, but just to read it from the Orah Hayim, and then we'll end today's class. Number 2, the words Chukat Torah, he says, is a remez, it's alluding. She'imi kaimu mitzvah zo. When a Jew observes the laws of para aduma, hagam heyota chuka belo ta'am. Even though it's a mitzvah that doesn't really make sense, doesn't have any reason to it, there's no rationale. Ma'aleh alahem hakatuv ki'ilu kiyimu haTorah asher tzivah Hashem lemor. God says, by keeping para aduma, I consider it as if you guys kept the whole Torah. Zot chukat, by keeping this chukah, haTorah, it's like you kept the whole Torah. Why is that? Ki kiyum hamitzvah belo ta'am. Because when a Jew observes the Torah without really understanding the reason, Yagid hatzlakat ha'emunah. This shows certain faith, with certainty. Guys showing Hashem, I don't understand it, but it doesn't matter. Because I know with certainty in you, Hashem. And I'm willing to observe all the mitzvot of the Creator. I don't need to understand. You said it, close my eyes and I do it. That's how much, Hashem, I believe in you. That's how much I'm confident in your knowledge and your wisdom. If you said it, it's good enough for me. I don't have to understand why. And this is the sign that how much faith I have, that I'm willing to keep mitzvot that I don't understand. Wow. When a person demonstrates their faith, we all have mitzvot in our life, my friends. Some mitzvot we like. Sometimes mitzvot we don't understand. And usually you should know that the Yetzer Hara, the areas of our observance that he comes to attack are those. It's the mitzvot that are not they don't make sense. They don't have a reason. And we cut corners, and we justify, and we give excuses, and we're not so careful, and it's fine, I don't have to wait. Anyways, what's this whole thing of waiting 6 hours between meat and dairy? Why do I have to wash my hands for bread? My hands are clean. And often the Yetzer Hara is coming and he's attacking in those areas. When a person doesn't understand necessarily why they're doing what they're doing. And of course, we have to use our brains. Of course, we're not supposed to be just mindless, robotic people. We were created with a brain to use it. We have to try to delve, to understand. But there are certain mitzvot that we don't understand, like para Tumah. And it's actually when a person observes that mitzvah, when a person in life goes through something that they don't understand, when the person keeps mitzvot that they don't understand. So such mitzvot, it's a way of a guy saying to Hashem, look, I don't get it. And usually I'm not the type of guy. I'm not the type of guy that I do things without thinking. I never do anything without thinking. My father always told me, I need to understand. And that's fine. That's a normal way to live. But Hashem, with you, you're my father. And if you told me, I do it without thinking. Because for you it makes sense. And I have faith. I have blind faith. I have emunah peshuta. That is the highest level that a Jew could reach. That is really the goal of life. The goal of life is for a person to get to that level. So when a person observes the Chukat, so our rabbis say it's like you observe the whole Torah. Because by keeping one thing, you're really, in essence, expressing full commitment to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. God, whatever you say, I'm ready to do. And these are the levels that our great tzaddikim reached in life. Avraham Avinu, Akedah Yitzchak. What was Akedah Yitzchak? Akedah Yitzchak was something that made no sense. Sacrifice your son? Bircha yidicha asher ahavta? How does it make any sense? That's what the Goyim are doing. They're burning their sons on the Molech. I'm going to do that now? You want me to do the same thing? Avraham says that my whole life I've been preaching to everyone around me? No way. God, can't be. That was the test of the Akedah. It was something that didn't make any sense. It was something that to Moshe, to Avraham, was the opposite of any brains. But he was able to say, Hashem, if this is what you want, that's what I'm going to do. And sometimes in our own personal lives, we get to a situation that we're stuck. We get to a point that we're like, Hashem, I don't understand. I'm keeping Shabbat and my business is tanking. I'm keeping kosher and I'm not getting healthier. How does any of this make sense? And a person that they get to that point and they decide, but you know what? I'm going to keep plugging. I'm going to keep pushing. I'm going to keep doing. I'm not going to allow the lack of logic to deter me. I'm still here. I still love you. And this is true, by the way, not only of mitzvot that don't make sense. This is true even more of situations in life that don't make sense. Sometimes we're in life situations. They don't make any sense. What's going on? How could it be? Look at that guy. He's so bad. He's living life. And me, I could barely afford. And I could barely this. And I don't have any children. I'm not getting married. Whatever it is that we're struggling with. When a person decides, although I don't see clearly, I don't see how this all makes sense, but Hashem, that's not going to stop me from loving you. That's not going to stop me from following you. It's not going to stop me from believing in you. It's not going to stop me from doing what you want me to do in this world. And I'm here. That's a chok. That's a person that reached the highest level of avodat Hashem. It's a level of pure, zero sechel, pure emunah. Emunah means faith. Faith means not when I know. Faith is when I don't know. Faith is when I don't understand. That's what faith is. When a person understands, that's not called faith, that's called knowing, right? My Rebbe used to say, right? He had a bottle of water on the table. He said, tell me, do you guys believe that this bottle of water is on the table? We said, yeah. He said, no. You don't believe it's on the table. You know it's on the table. Believe is when you don't see it. Believe is if I put a bottle of water and then I put a covering. Okay. Do you guys believe that there's a bottle of water here? Right? You believe? And you say, yeah, I believe. He says, no, look, there's no water. So that's where believe is. Believe is where I don't see it. But I believe it's there because you told me it's there. And I trust. But I don't see. It doesn't make any sense. But I'm ready to follow. So that's the Chukat. That's the Chukat of the Torah. Of course, again, there's a lot more to talk about. Because not only are mitzvot sometimes not making sense, but like we said, sometimes life doesn't make sense. But it's specifically these mitzvot that give us the strength, that give us the emunah, that give us the power, the courage, the resilience to keep moving forward, believing that better days will come, believing that in the end it's going to be okay. And if it's not okay, it's not the end. If it's not okay, it's not the end. Ultimately, Hashem is in charge, and Hashem, for Him, it makes sense. And if He makes sense, then for me, that's enough. For me, that's enough. Okay, my friends, we'll stop over here. Have a wonderful day, and hopefully we'll see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.